speaking with George William Schenck, and he's going to bring us up to date on his memories of South Brunswick, and especially the Schenck farm and his grandparents.
Okay, I was born on Route 1, up in a area where Gert Harms lived. Next to us was the Hanson Junkyard, and across the street was Red's Garage. My grandmother Schenck, you wanted her name?
Yes.
Was Margaret. Her maiden name was Bailey's. We moved to Monmouth Junction in late 39, early 40s. My grandfather had two different farms. The first one he rented was Aerochem, where Aerochem now is, in part of Dow Jones, and that house is torn down. And then in 49 or 50, he bought a farm across the street, which now is Ayerst. And when that farm was sold, the house was moved by Bill Prine across the fields and now sits on the other side of Prine Road. That house is still there. I went to the old Monmouth Junction School. My teachers were Miss Queenan for 1st and 2nd grade, and Gloria Poinsett for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and Elizabeth Weaver was the principal. And then we were transferred to Dayton School, and in 6th grade the teacher was Edna Ottendorfer, 7th grade was Marie Rowe, and 8th grade was Molly Dowden, who also was the principal. Some of the things that I remember in Junction was, as a kid, we would go down to Tony's bar, and he had ice cream there, and a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, we'd buy some ice cream, and then we were allowed to sit with the gateman, and he would let us raise the gates after a train went by, and that was a real nice thing to do. Princeton Nurseries graded peaches in Junction, and I worked there for about 3 years. I delivered peaches. The people in town would call my mother's house or the nursery and order peaches. I would deliver them, charging 5 cents a basket for a small basket and 10 cents for a big basket. And I also was hired to cart water from the pitcher pump up for the nursery.
Pitcher pump by Stouts?
Yes, that one there that is there but no longer in use. Also, we could catch a local train, and we would catch a train about 10 o'clock in the morning and go to New Brunswick and go to Crystal Lunch for a hot dog, go to the movies, and come back 4 o'clock and still have change. Some of the businesses that I can remember were Bennett and Clayton, which then turned to Junction Fuel and Supply, and now is a bunch of things. We dealt with them with our farm supplies, and we also, with the sidings, we would unload our potatoes, fertilizer, whatever on the sidings. Some of the other businesses, with Van Sice's Garage, and you had a horse there, didn't you, with
no, Audrey had a horse.
Audrey had the horse? Okay.
I had it at our house.
Okay. And of course, Tony's Bar, Emmons' store, Lester's store, which was the post office, Kish's, and then Inzio's, where we could also get ice cream. Sammy Freed's, we'd go out there once in a while. And then, of course, there also was the Old Stone Inn. But also down by the railroad was Boozenberry's. They had a store in the building next to it. And out here at Major Road, Kingston Lane, was Pro Hammers with the radio place. And, of course, Charlie's famous barbershop. Now that brings me up to there. When I went to Junction School, we also did our big plays at the, I guess it was called Mechanics Hall,
right,
which burnt down.
On Ridge Road?
On Ridge Road. I worked for, Ridge Door bought out whoever owned where the Princeton Nursery was, and I worked after school and also when they moved down to New Road. Also, when the Princeton Nurseries had it, they used the German prisoners of war, and these to sort the peaches. And these were what they said the good guys who didn't really believe in fighting.
When was that, Bill?
That was in the
Second World War?
yeah, the late 40s, because it was, you know, I had a wagon to deliver the peaches, and they were there. I have belonged to Miller Memorial Presbyterian Church since about, I guess, 45 or 46. When we first moved here, I went to Kingston Church because that's where my father's roots were. I've been an ordained elder there since 1965. I don't know how much further that you want to go on this now, Kate.
Well, your grandfather, how long do you remember that he had his farm on Ridge Road?
Well,
where, is it Aerochem?
Aerochem?
Which is now Dow Jones.
Dow Jones, and they tore that beautiful big house down.
Right. Was it movable?
The house? Oh, I don't think so. That house also had hand-hewed beams into it, and when Aerochem bought it from, I believe the nursery owned it, they hired Kurt Conover, who went in there and he bared all the beams. And when he was done, when they were in there, he invited my father and I up to see it. But my grandfather was there for a very, very long time, you know.
Raised mostly potatoes?
We raised, well, we also were what they called on-the-road farmers. At one time, we probably had close to 500 acres, but we farmed up in Pensneck. We farmed part of where by Prime Road there, Carlton Road, Stout. We farmed there. We farmed also over on Culver Road. We farmed a little bit on Haypress Road. Those crops were crops that didn't need too much tending.
Soybeans?
Grain, soybeans, and whatnot. The farm we had, my grandfather kept right around 50 head of cows, about 35 milking. A fond memory I had was, in those days it was raw milk, and my grandfather had an old International pickup, but not a pickup, a little like a van, and he delivered. Now he delivered milk to the Greyhound bus station out here on Route 1, which is now, it used to be a flag post, I don't know what it is now.
South Brunswick Manor or something like that?
Yeah, and also on Route 27, I think it's Bromley's or whatever.
Right.
That was the other one. He delivered milk there, and he also delivered milk to the Princeton Nursery. They had a big barracks up there. We delivered milk there, and
barracks for
their men. For their men, and we delivered to an awful lot of people that worked for the nursery and had all the yellow houses, and also we delivered to up to the Pensneck Circle, where there were 3 or 4 diners at one time all around that circle, and we sold our potatoes, the little potatoes, to Macon. He had Macon's Inn over here at the end of Raymond Road, and he boiled that. He raised pigs.
That was Raymond Road and Route 1.
And Route 1. He boiled them, and they were his feed for the pigs.
And did your brothers work on the farm also?
No.
Just you?
Yeah, they would come up to help, but not really, because there's 10 years difference roughly between myself and the next brother. But as industry started to come around, we found it hard to get a lease. We used to get 5-year leases, and when industry came around, we could only get 2-year, maybe a year, and you can't farm that way. The farm where Ayerst is was, I believe, like 56 acres. It was surrounded by the Landis farm, the Ayerst farm, and the Primes farm. My grandfather's farm was like in the middle. And when we moved over there, we also did a lot, mainly local. We sold most of our potatoes to Wise Potato Chip, and when people started to irrigate, my grandfather wouldn't irrigate because for 56 acres it was too costly, and for, I could say, maybe 3 years, we had an exclusive with Wise Potato Chip because they hadn't developed a way to chip the irrigated potato yet because of the moisture content. So the man would come out in a station wagon and he would dig a hill of potato here and there all the way around the field, take them to his station wagon, and he had a deep fryer, so to speak, set up, and he would cut, peel, chip the whole bit, and then based on what he found out, which it was, I don't think there was ever a deal signed, but would tell my grandfather that we will take all the potatoes you can supply us with.
Did you deal with a potato broker during World War II?
Yeah, we did. We dealt with basically Chamberlain and Barclay.
Mm-hmm. That's over on Route 130?
No, Chamberlain and Barclay is on maybe Cranberry Station Road. It's right at Cranberry State over there. We also dealt with Leroy Dial.
And they were armed. A lot of the potatoes were for the Army at that time, right?
Well, I don't know. The thing that bothered me was when they came out with the price control, and the federal inspectors would come out, and they would grade your potatoes. They had a regular, looked like a muffin tin, and they would grade your potatoes. And they bought your potatoes, and you had to put vegetable dye onto them, and then chop them up. Mm-hmm. And that really bothered me when I knew that there was so many and you could not take a chance on selling any potatoes that were more or less to be colored. If you had ever got caught selling them, it was deep trouble, deep trouble.
So you were subsidized?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather never agreed with it, but you had to do it. You had to do it if you wanted to survive.
And he belonged to the farmers.
He belonged to an agricultural, right. I also belonged, and my father did, to the Pioneer Grange. In fact, I started up in the juvenile Grange, and then after I became old enough, went into the regular Grange. But yeah, my grandfather belonged to an agricultural, whatever it was.
Organization.
Yes, and we also dealt with farm machinery with the Barlows, which were in Plainsboro, right there where it comes in by Lapidus Market, right in, I don't know what's there, like there's a hardware store or something there now where the Barlow place was.
What did you do for recreation other than get on the train and go to New Brunswick?
Well, because I was the oldest son, my recreation as I got older was on the farm. Easter vacation, we planted potatoes. And as this farm got smaller, my father had to supplement his income. He worked full-time at Ridge Door, and then we did nighttime farming. But this was down when we were like under 100 acres. When I went to Jamesburg High School, I played soccer, and in those days there was no such thing as a late bus. And Terry Brabson and a few others, myself, would walk home at night if my mother, and also there was only one car in our family. If my mother had the car or somebody else, they would come pick us up. And it was a long walk after you lost the soccer game. But there was no, well, I used to watch the Twin M. Mm-hmm. Now they first started across the street from where I lived by the barber shop. They started there, and then they moved down Ridge Road to the gravel pit, and played there for a good many years. As a teenager, I joined both the fire company and the squad. I was as far as captain in the squad, and I was first engineer in the fire company. I'm a life member of both now. No, but my son Jimmy was into scouting, and I was a little involved with that, but as I look back now, I was really involved with the squad and the fire company, and Reverend Maltby was working very hard with the scouts, so he assumed some of my duties. But I slept out with him in Jamesburg and slept out with him in the Boy Scout camp a couple of weekends.
And you have 3 daughters and a son?
I have 3 daughters and 2 sons. I have a son by my first marriage, who lives in Florida, and my 2 daughters live in Connecticut, and my daughter Debbie lives in Monmouth Junction, and Jimmy lives with us. And I have 5 grandchildren. I have 2 that are adopted. They were adopted by my daughter Sandy, and then she also has 2, and then my grandson in Florida.
You brought up about the pump,
Yes.
in Monmouth Junction. Can you tell us a little bit more about what went around there and stuff? And
Well, if it got dry and you went to the pump to get water, you could probably figure on waiting a half hour. That's how big the line was. The water was good, and people came. They used to come with milk cans and everything, but that was great. Now, I went to work for the township in '71, and one of my jobs was to replace that pitcher pump because it was worn out. I am not sure how long that lasted, but the State Department of Health then required the township, if they were going to test the water so much, and the town figured that they just weren't going to get into it. Another memory I have, though, is ice skating. In back of Stout's Lumberyard was a pond, and the Stout family was gracious enough to leave us scraps of wood for the fire, and I can remember skating from the pond all the way up to, almost up to Route 1, where along the railroad that broke along there, and of course that after a while got rode in and was no longer feasible.
I remember they used to have a loading dock by that old pump.
Oh yeah.
And we used to sit there and eat the pears in the fall. Everybody had their initials carved up on the door.
Yes.
Yeah.
The loading dock was from the Stouts, from the Red Barn.
Red Barn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Red Barn.
Yeah. It was like a hangout for the kids,
Yes.
like a congregation area, because there was nothing really, no entertainment or anything like that, and we used to hang out there.
Not many people that we've interviewed spoke too much about the Ayerst Stout lumberyard, and I think that we've kind of left that out. It certainly did supply a lot of people
Yes.
with their home building.
Right, nails and everything. Definitely. You also do any fishing in Stout's Pond?
No, I never. The only place that we ever tried to fish, and it didn't work, was the reservoir, which was by the, you know where that was, by where the Jamesburg siding joined
Right.
the main.
Did you ever swim in there?
Yes, once, and then that was it. A lot of people did though, but I just didn't feel comfortable there.
How about the manure dumps?
The only
God, you can.
The only thing that I can remember about the manure dumps is the bums that used to live up there.
Keep talking about.
We were told that the police in New York had the horses, and the manure from the horses was brought down to the manure dump and dried and sold. I don't remember that happening, but I do remember the bums, the hobos that lived down there, and there were quite a few of them then. Quite a few of them.
We just went all over that business this morning, the manure business and the production that went on down there. It was quite lucrative in the early 1920s and in that era. Anything else, Billy? Anything about the township what was the biggest change that you've seen that you liked the best?
Well,
Yes,
the biggest